Our first reading is from Psalm 8. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babes and infants, you have founded a bulwark because of your foes, to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. And our second reading is from Proverbs 8, 1 through 4, and 22 to 31. Does not wisdom call, and does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights, beside the way, at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the gates, in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals, she cries out, to you, O people, I call, and my cry is to all that live. The Lord created me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of long ago. Ages ago I was set up, at the first, before the beginning of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth, when there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. When he had not yet made earth and fields, or the world's bits of soil, when he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him, like a master worker, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and delighting in the human race. I remember camping in Shawnee National Forest many years ago with a group of friends, and during the day we hiked far back into the forest, climbing steep hills, trying to reach the most inaccessible spot we could in one day's walk. As evening fell, we pitched our tents, built a campfire, and sat around it, talking and singing as the night began to fall around us. I had never really camped before. I had never sat in such relative isolation from the rest of society. I soon heard rustlings and crackles in the underbrush of creatures I could not see or recognize. And as the fire died down, we were prepared to crawl into our sleeping bags. I had the most incredible experience. First, the deepness of the darkness, and second, the brilliance and beauty of the breathtaking spangle of the stars spread in all their brightness above us. Amidst the darkness and mystery of the nighttime forest, I looked up to see God's glory in the scintillating sparkle of the stars, and I was awed at God's handwork. I remembered that starlit night as I read Psalm 8. Let me read you the part that struck me, and this time it's the Message translation of the Bible. It says, I look up at your macro skies, dark and enormous, your handmade sky jewelry, moon and stars mounted in their settings. Then I look at my micro self and wonder, why do you bother with us? Why take a second look our way? This psalm is a poem of the night, an evening song of love and praise to God for all God's creation, but especially for the nighttime world. This is a psalm for soul searchers and stargazers. I imagine the person who wrote this psalm, one who had never seen rockets carrying astronauts to the moon, one for whom life was centered on this earth, in this sky, with no idea that the stars shining down from above were just a tiny part of what we now know is an ever expanding universe. But the awe and glory of this moment, that vision of God's creation and eternity, were still as powerful, still as awe inspiring then as they should be for us today. With all we now know, shouldn't our wonder be increased tenfold? I imagine that there have been times in your life when some beautiful experience of nature left you awestruck and ecstatic. There are such wondrous sights to see in our natural world that all we can do is draw in a quick breath at the wonder of it and whisper a heartfelt prayer of thanks. This psalm expresses that sentiment. You have set your glory above the heavens, says the psalmist. At the center of the psalm is a deep felt, soul searching question. The psalmist wonders why on earth the creator of such a vast universe would ever care for one little solitary soul. What is a human being that you would remember him? What is a mortal that you would care for her? Who are we, these human creatures, that you should love us so much? The answer is in the next stanza, and it may surprise you, because the psalmist says human beings are not insignificant. They are a little lower than God. Or, as the message translation says, we've nearly missed being gods, bright with Eden's dawn light. You put us in charge of your handcrafted world. God so values us that God has called us to participate in the ordering, shaping, nurturing, and caring for the life on planet Earth. We are given dominion, a word that means we are entrusted with sacred responsibility to be wise stewards of the earth, not a privilege to be exploited, but one to be treasured and honored, not used for personal gain or wealth, rather to be cared for. Human beings are not to conquer creation. We are to be the faithful stewards. God holds the whole world in God's hands, but entrusts us with the care of everything under our feet. Because we matter, God has given us meaningful work. We are part of nature, and our job is to see that it continues to be full of life and goes on into the future. God reveals Godness through contact with humanity. So, what are human beings? The first affirmation of who we are is that, like all creation, we are God made. Regardless of how we believe humans were made, we were finally and ultimately God made. And the second affirmation is that human beings are measured. When we look up to the heavens, we immediately sense our smallness measured against the magnificence of God's world. We become aware of our mortality, the brevity of our lives, our transience in our time here. It helps us remember who we are and the enormity of the task which we are given. The third affirmation is that humans are magnified. We are mere mortals, weaklings without God, but God has crowned us with honor and glory. The psalm speaks of the two opposite sides of humanity, human lowness and human height. Human greatness is God given. God has made us just slightly lower than the heavenly one, something we must remember when we start thinking it's all about us. God is mindful of us with all our faults and sorrows and anxieties and fears. God cares for us and gives us incomprehensible grace. And the final affirmation of this psalm is that humans are given dominion over the animals in all its power and fierceness and over the earth, but over creatures great and small. It's a sacred trust. Being made in the image of God is not simply a privilege, but a responsibility. These past years or so, we are reminded of the fierceness and strength of the forces of nature. When tornado winds roared over the fields of western Kentucky, human beings were scattered and lost like so much dust. Their lives forever changed. Grief and terror overcame them. But time and again, I heard people interviewed on the news say, if it were not for my faith in God, I would truly be lost. We are mortals and we are weak. Our lives are fragile and often fleeting. But in the midst of terror and loss, God is still there, holding on to us, reaching into our hearts, as far away as the stars and as near as the next breath we breathe. We are mortal beings and we die, sometimes too soon and sometimes unexpectedly. But God has not deserted us. We are stewards and caregivers of our world and of each other. God is with us when we mourn, and God is with us in the joy that comes from creation, in the love that we show each other when all hope seems lost. In our reading from Proverbs, Lady Wisdom stands on the street corners, calling out to us, telling us that wisdom is now and has ever been a part of the great God and the great creation. Before any creation was God, with a wisdom and an integral part, and so wisdom was with them, dancing and laughing at the works of God, glorying in her part of creation, firstborn and beloved, delighting in God's creation of the human race. She calls to us with urgency and meaning. Pay attention, she says. And she stands and tells us of the glories of God's creation and her place within it. She is one part of the paradox of the wisdom literature. Proverbs tells us the way to live a good and successful life. But to balance that view, we have the book of Job, whose questions remind us of mysteries and the seeming injustice of life. It is those injustices, those questions we experience, that happens when we see the tragic natural disasters. We are small and we are mortal, but we are beloved nonetheless. Proverbs tells us that the essential part of living a good life is to have fear of the Lord. Now, this does not mean that we cower in fear and hopelessness at the power of God, or that we believe that God punishes us by inflicting pain on us. What it does mean is that we have deep reverence and awe before the one who made us and who is the source of all true wisdom. Our wisdom writings help us understand the larger question of how an almighty and transcendent God, and a God that sometimes can seem distant, can be present and active and known to us right here in the physical creation in which we live and touch and enjoy. These passages about Lady Wisdom sing with the song of love of God and God's creation. The words leap with joy for the world in which God has placed us, as dangerous and as fearsome as that world can sometimes be. Lady Wisdom stands with us even today, in the most public of places, in the midst of the people, and declares that this creation, which God has given us, is for everyone, that it is right and beautiful, and that she was always there with God, and like God, is with us still. God created a wondrous and orderly world, and I believe it was given to us in great joy and with great responsibility. It was given to us by a generous and loving God, and the wisdom was there for us too, always delighting in God's work, applauding creation, celebrating the human family, just as we should still do. So now and then, stop and take a moment and spend time with nature and with the beauty of our world. In those little moments of peace, we might just experience God in our everyday lives. We become grounded in our world by walking upon it and marveling at its intricacies. We learn to sit quietly in a small and beautiful place and just be mindful of God's creation and God's gift to us of this glorious world. And then we realize we are an interconnected part of creation. This is the truth of God. Creation is a holy web of relationship, a gift meant for all. It vibrates with the pain of all its parts, and its destiny is joy. Our earth is so powerful, yet so fragile, so beautiful and enduring. We are small and vulnerable, but we sing praises to our Creator, and we are blessed to be held by the hand of God. So today or tonight, when it starts getting dark, stand in your yard and remember to lift your eyes to the bright stars and let the light shine down upon you, knowing that God is with you always. Amen.